My name is Chum Struve. We have not met, and Clubby, like my children that have grown very quickly, I'm in my 5th year here with Clubby, so I'm really excited about that. So Rick and I met through the wild world of networking, and this opportunity came up. So I'm really excited to bring you Clubby for the 5th year. And Rick over there has his events on the first Thursday, and I want to announce the October events that we have coming up. October 3rd is a success story to inspire. October 16th, back here at the University Club, is navigating the white water of change. October 30th, back at the Minneapolis Club, is exit strategies. And then also the beginning of November 8th, graceful exits, creating a successful ESOP, also at the Minneapolis Club. Our sponsors for the Clubby are very generous, and I want to acknowledge them: the University Club, the Irish Titan, an e-commerce digital agency, Boulay CPAs, and we have Jay here somewhere. There's Jay. Winthrop and Weinstein, and then my company, Legal Shield, providing identity theft through employee benefits. And I'd like to get started right away and introduce our guest speaker today, Todd Eberhart of Dynasty Leadership. As a serial entrepreneur, Todd has co-founded 6 companies in the technology and management space. He has sold businesses to private equity and management teams. He has twice appeared on the Inc. 500 as an entrepreneur, and he is proud to say that one of his current clients has also recently achieved Inc. 500 status as one of the 500 fastest growing private companies in the country. Todd has led teams that have interviewed over 7,000 small to medium-sized businesses over the past decade. This has led him to develop unique processes like Grand Slam clients that you will hear about today. Todd now works with high-performing entrepreneurs and CEOs who are either in their first or last years of leadership. This allows them to maximize the value and preserve the legacy of their business. Please give Todd a warm welcome as he helps you learn how to develop Grand Slam clients, people that love the work you do, pay you well, and rave about you to others.
Thank you. And if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to step out here and just try and talk a little bit louder. First of all, thanks to Chum Struve as well as Clubby here in St. Paul for bringing us together today. Now, if you could just help me with a quick show of hands, how many of you bring in new business by referral? Anyone? Okay, good start, good start. Wonderful. Okay, same show of hands, but add a few fingers this time. Help me with this. How referable are you? If 5 is the best, where do you rank yourself? 5s, 5, 3s, nice. All right, let's put that to the test. What I'd like you to do is get with a partner at your table, and in the next 30 seconds, I'd like you to explain to him what you do and what an ideal client looks like, okay? For 30 seconds, explain to him what you do and what an ideal client looks like. I'll be timekeeper. At 30 seconds, I'll have you switch, and the other person can share that information. All right? So let's see how you speed networkers go. Start. Okay, can I get one brave soul from the crowd, one person that's willing to stand up and share with us what they learned about your new friend? Who's willing to stand up and tell us, here's what they do and here's who they look for? Yes?
Hi, I'm Joey. I'll be introducing Brian. So Brian is an employee benefits broker from the Breyer Agency, family-owned agency, been in Roseville for a long time. They're looking for anywhere from 25 to 50 employees.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. We could probably go around the room and that'd be interesting, but I'd like to keep us moving forward. What we've learned over time is there are 3 things we look for, especially when we're networking and going through these processes. Those 3 things look like clarity, okay? We would like, when we're listening to somebody, use simple words. Okay? Use words we can all understand without jargon, without complexity. The second thing we look for is brevity. Okay? Not just in what we do, but what we're looking for. Okay? Bless you. So be clear, be quick. Statistically speaking, we can only handle between 1 and 3 chunks of information for each of these interactions. So a 10-minute conversation doesn't help as much as we think. Think of it like juggling watermelon. You start holding too many things and they all slip away. The third thing we listen for is uniqueness. So whether you're working for an investment bank, private equity firm, or a coach or consultant, there's always competition. What are we doing to help make shelf space in our minds for how does this stand out? How do I know when to call Sean? What does that look like for us? So clarity, brevity, uniqueness. And here's where we struggle, especially in a networking world. These are the top things that I hear from people when they have a little bit of confusion, okay? Now, if you've ever talked to somebody in a networking environment, this comes up a lot, right? Because our world is more complicated now. We have, especially in service-based businesses, we struggle with a lot of different things. I've heard a lot, we cast a wide net. I've even had a lawyer tell me, as long as they have a checkbook and a heartbeat, I want them, bring them in. And, you know, the whole idea, I know it when I see it, it is tough. It's tough when we're running our own business. It's tough because very hard to read the label from inside the bottle. Okay? You're not alone though. How many of you remember the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt? So he starred in this movie as he was like a former baseball phenom that really flamed out in the majors. And he became the general manager of the lowly Oakland A's, the poor stepchild of pro baseball at the time. He actually was struggling with the very same things we struggle with as business owners and entrepreneurs, in that he had limited time, limited funds, and limited capacity. Limited time in that, much like our Minnesota Twins, he only had till October to win enough games to get into the playoffs. He had limited funds because he had this tightwad owner that would only spend $30 million, right? Huge number. But he's competing against teams willing to spend $100 million to attract talent. And then limited capacity. They could only roster 25 players. Very similar to our worlds, that we struggle with all that. In the movie, Brad Pitt is searching for how are we going to compete in an unfair game? How are we going to do this? And so in this particular clip, he's talking with a bunch of scouts that have been around forever and have been doing things the exact same way. And they keep tossing around these old ideas, and he gets more and more frustrated. I'm going to try and play this clip shortly for you, and hopefully we don't get too much feedback as we go, because it's going to come right off of here.
I like Geronimo. Yes. Okay. The guy's an athlete, big, fast, talented.
Top of my list.
Clean cut, good face.
Yeah, good job.
5 tools guy. Good looking ball player.
Can he hit?
Yeah, he's got a beautiful swing, right, Barry?
Ball explodes off his bat. He throws the club head at the ball, and when he connects, he drives it. It pops off the bat. You can hear it all over the ballpark.
A lot of pop coming off the bat.
And it's effort.
If he's a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good?
And he nails it, right? He cuts right down to the point and gets past it. The problem is when we're not all laser focused on what we're after and what we agree is our best opportunities, we get conversations like this. And if you've ever sat around in a trade show, we tend to talk in our little packs about the same things, where we've had limited success for decades. And yet because we haven't found a different way, we're going to keep doing that. And that's frustrating. Now, one of the people, staying with a baseball theme, that figured out what was good for him and how to get around this early was a Hall of Famer by the name of Ted Williams. Ted Williams of Boston Red Sox fame was our last pro ball player to hit 400 for a season. And that was way back in 1941. Ted Williams, at a very early time when he was just breaking into baseball, actually stopped here in the Twin Cities with our very own Minneapolis Millers. And while he was doing that, he was fortunate enough to have a coach by the name of Rogers Hornsby, who was also a Hall of Fame player. And they got to work very early on what would work for him. Because you see, Ted Williams was a lefty, and he was also what they call a dead pull hitter. So as he's standing there and he gets his right pitch, he would crush them out to right field if it was his pitch. If it wasn't his pitch, it was ugly. And so they took a look at every at-bat he had had, and they mapped it out with a heat map you see in the center. And what they learned from that was there are certain pitches that were perfect for him, and he had to be very disciplined and also willing to let certain things go by that looked good on the surface but weren't his pitch. So if you see those bright colors, the reds, the oranges, those are the ones he could crush. And if you take a look at the icy colors, the grays and blues of Minnesota, you start to see the ones that even though they were strikes, he would have to let those go by. And that discipline changed everything for him. That's how he got to be a 400 hitter. So this is what we're thinking about. What it tells me is that maybe we shouldn't all be chasing the Googles and the Amazons, or even the Targets or the 3Ms. Maybe we should be looking at what those pitches are for us that help separate us from the crowd. So how do we do that? Let's start with our own numbers. Okay? Let's start with, what does it take us to get one new client aboard? I'll give you the simple math that it works, okay? So start out with your sales, right? Whatever you have for salespeople, their commission, their bonus, everything that goes into that. And then you add to it your cost of marketing. So that's your website, that's collateral, email, those type of things. Add it all together and divide it by the total number of new customers you brought on in that time period. I'll put some numbers to it to give you some context. So I have a client that has 5 salespeople and a manager. They spend $475,000 on that investment. They'll add to it another $600,000 to attract the attention of potential new clients. And that's their collateral, that's their email drip campaigns, that's their Las Vegas trade shows. Now you're up to over $1 million of expense, investment to bring in those new, which got them to 47 new clients at a cost of $22,872. Now, everybody has their own individual situation, their own company, their own metrics, so your mileage will vary. But it's important to know, what is this costing us? What are we investing in to get this done? What I've learned as we have gone through and interviewed these 7,000 small to medium-sized tech companies and businesses across the country is there's a huge chasm between those that were doing a good job at driving new business and those that struggled. And there were far more that struggled. And when we went through and we analyzed what was happening in their world, we found that there was a pattern. We turned that pattern into a process. And that process is Grand Slam Sales that helps us get to the heart of what works for you. What do your Grand Slam clients look like? So now I spend my time with wonderful entrepreneurs like you and your friends, helping them keep the best clients for themselves and leave everyone else wondering how you did it. The 3 keys that come down to it are this. There are demographics, there are timing triggers, and there are psychographics. They're all important, so we're going to talk about each one of them. Demographics is the one you'll hear most often when you're having the networking conversations. It's the ones that we know best, that we're comfortable with. Okay, I work with this size company, so it's the sales size, employee size of the businesses you talk to. It's the level that you'll call within there, so it might be we only call on CEOs, or we work with the purchasing agent, those type of things. It'll be the industries that you work in within your world, maybe banks, maybe bakeries. And it will also be the geography. So maybe it's just downtown St. Paul that you sell in, or maybe it's the entire Midwest. But once you gather those things up, those become the demographics that you use. And everybody has a pretty fair assessment of that. But if it were just that easy, man, we can go pull a list for pennies on the dollar. It'd be raining new business. So we know there's more to it. So let's keep going. After you've hit some singles, now we're talking about timing triggers. Think of it this way. What is different in your prospects' world today than yesterday that has them picking up the phone and saying, Tony, I need you, man. Get out here. That has them clicking on your Buy Now button on the website. That has them finally signing that contract that's been sitting on their desk for the last 3 months. Now, when we talk to our prospects, they love to think of themselves as hugely logical. Well, I got to do my research, I got to crunch some numbers, I'll get back to you, right? We love to think of it that way. But the truth is, there is so much more emotion tied up in that final decision, and we need to be sensitive to that. J.P. Morgan framed it out this way. There's 2 reasons a man gives for what he does, a good one and the real one. We need to get to both of those as quickly as possible. Which brings me to my friend and former client, Steve. Now, Steve just sold his business this last year. So we're sitting down and we're talking about how did it come to pass? What got you to that point? And Steve starts off with his good answers. And he says, well, you know, the market's been hot. And, geez, I'm in my 60s. He said, I don't want to wait till I hit warranty issues with knees, hips, back, heart. And he said, I want to enjoy it. I said, Steve, God, that makes perfect sense. But the market's been hot and you've been in your 60s for quite some time now. So, what else have we got? And we kind of do this dance where he keeps, you know, I'm asking questions and he keeps throwing what sound like good answers. And then I asked him, what about Carol? What does your lovely wife, Carol, think of the sale? And he goes, oh, funny story. I said, well, you know, she's been after me every year in the winter. She says, hey, let's go get warm. It is cold up here. Let's go find some time to get away. And Steve's answer was always the same. It was like, honey, I love you, but I got a business to run. I got people that need me. We can't. This is our busy time. You fast forward to last winter, and she asked him again. She says, Steve, please. And you guys were here for this last winter. It was not great. Please, let's get away. Let's go to Phoenix. Let's go visit some people. Let's have some fun. And he said it again. He says, honey, I got a business to run. I got people that need me. I can't. And then Carol asked him one more question. Steve, would you mind if I went down alone anyway? Bah! Timing trigger. Hit him like a ton of bricks. That business was up for sale in a heartbeat. So we love to think of ourselves as super logical about all these things, but the reality is we're very emotional creatures, even when it's a highly technical sale. So that gets you to second, where we're talking about what's changing in their world. The next piece is psychographics, okay? And that's just a fancy way of saying, what are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we believe in? Seth Godin, a master marketer, framed it this way. He said, people like us do things like this. Super simple. So I give you Tesla as an example. Now Tesla, brand new electric car company, hot off the press, as they're rolling out their first 50,000 super snazzy, super expensive electric cars, here's what I can tell you. There was not a person in that group that had a rusted out Chevy Malibu that was about to die. And they said, oh, this is going anyway, I'll get a Tesla. No, we don't think like that. Those people that bought those new Teslas all had perfectly good Lexus 500s, Audi A8s, Porsche Cayennes sitting in their garage. But that story resonated with them. So maybe they fancied themselves a neophile, right? The people that got to have the latest and greatest, the newest, fanciest thing. And that spoke to them. Maybe they're environmentalists, right? And they said, ooh, lower my carbon footprint. I want to be good to the planet. I'm going electric. Maybe they're just a tech geek. You see those massive screens and they say, oh my God, that thing goes in for service overnight in my car with Wi-Fi, right in the garage. Love it. And you know what? I can get ludicrous mode for another 10 grand. All kinds of different thoughts, but those are the stories that resonate. That's the ones that we tell ourselves about who we are. I had another friend has a Maserati. And he was about ready to trade that in. I said, oh, are you thinking Tesla? And he goes, no, never going to do it. I was like, Jesus, Jeff, why not? He goes, Pfft. It's like, well, what does that mean? He goes, that's the sound they make. They're gutless. He said, so I want to growl. I want a mean car. But those are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. So I have a client and good friend, Mike, going through this, and he shared with me that they have a tech company, cutting-edge tech company. Once in a while, they will sit down with a prospect, and that prospect will tell them flat out, oh, Mike, we love your stuff, but we only buy from companies in Gartner's Magic Quadrant. Now, for those of you not in the tech world, Gartner is just like J.D. Powers or ISO 9001. Really just says, hey, we're safe bet, right? The nobody ever got fired for buying IBM kind of discussion. But Mike knows right away, and he's taught his sales team. He says, when we hear that, we've got to move. We got to go look for the people that are looking for innovation, that are looking to make the best difference for their company, regardless of the label. And they can very quickly pivot and spend their time with their best Grand Slam clients that way. So as we're thinking about how we want to keep that going, I'm going to bring up my nephew Jordan. Now, my nephew Jordan's an incredible athlete. Ended up playing college football, 2 different positions. Also, he's all about domination. I knew from a very young age with him that if we were playing Battleship, if we were playing Monopoly, and he was losing, that board's getting tipped over. He made real sure that if he wasn't going to win, you weren't going to win either. He was all about domination and competition. That's just the way we are, right? So whether it's Tim that's waiting outside the Apple store in a line of 100 so he can get the next newest iPhone for $1,000 a crack, or Tina that leaves her family on Thanksgiving evening right after dinner and goes and parks outside the Walmart with 1,000 of her new best friends so she can get up super early on Black Friday morning and race inside and save $15 on an Instapot. Or you get Trevor, the millennial, right? The one who's going to show up late for work on Cyber Monday because he's logging in quick so he can snag the latest Eno hammock for himself. Those are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. So as we're going forward, that becomes super important. So you think about it in terms of demographics, the timing triggers, the psychographics. That's what this all works towards, okay? When you put those together for your business, because you all have your own entrepreneurial DNA, you create separation from the crowd. You create the right fit for you. Create your best pitches. And that looks like my friend and client, Dr. Bill Katonius. He's a dentist that has a string of very successful clinics here in the Twin Cities. And if you've ever talked to a dentist that was talking about putting in a new office, they love the shiny cities. They love the Edinas. They love the Maple Groves. They love the Woodburys. Not Bill. Bill specifically goes to the overlooked suburbs. He goes to the Brooklyn centers, to the Robbinsdales that are densely packed but underserved. And he is happy to work with second, third, and fourth generation family members that are all in the same neighborhood. He's equally happy to work with first generation immigrant families that may not have insurance, that may not have been familiar with preventative dental care. And you know what? A lot of times their first experience with Bill is a tooth extraction. Not a lovely start, but necessary. And that leads him to people like Johnny. So Bill's telling me this story about Johnny. Now Johnny, he certainly doesn't have a Tesla. He doesn't even have a car. What's more than that? He doesn't own a cell phone. So he's not high on normal demographic profiling. But he does love a good smile. And so when he saves up enough cash, he will walk to the nearest payphone and he'll call Bill's office. Bill takes time off of work and he will drive to that payphone. He's going to pick Johnny up, bring him back to the office, and he gets him fitted for a beautiful new crown. And then he drives him back so Johnny can finish out his workday. Now, for all those different things, those are Bill's Grand Slam clients. And those are ones that create a huge amount of space because no one else is going after them, but they're all willing to pay and be loyal clients to Bill. And that makes all the difference in the world. And what's more, Bill is smart enough to know to never prejudge how someone is going to spend their money. Okay? So those are the keys. That's how we get this connected. How do you pull it through for you? What I've found over time is the absolute best way is through storytelling. Let's talk about what's real. Let's talk about what actually happened versus guessing about the future. Now, the very first thing you're going to need to do when you get this, you need to get a guide. You need to get what's called an active listener. The way to think about that, somebody that you trust, but they don't know you well enough where they can finish all your stories for you, which typically lets out all your spouses. So, as you go through this, you want to start talking about what's great. Who are our best clients? Who are the ones we love? I would love to have 100 more just like them, right? These are our best people. Get your teams together. Have them share those stories and get all the best ones out. Think about those demographics. Where are they coming from? What level are we calling on? What really happened in there that set us apart, and why do they stay with us? Go through all these things and feel free to interview your clients. Once you've exhausted all of those great stories, you need to flip it around. What I can tell you is probably the biggest secret you'll learn here today, because paying attention to your worst client stories is tough to do. But they are probably your most essential building blocks for the process. Look, as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, we need to be positive. We're all leading people forward. We're doing these things. We love a good victory lap, but we hate talking about our strikeouts, our failures, where we missed out. But they're so key to identifying what's really going on in our business and what works for us. So get those out. Absolutely, there's going to be times when you got the wrong fit in the client. They were too small, they were too big, they were too far away, all those different things. Absolutely get them out. But we need to be brutally honest with ourselves, because sometimes it's not them, sometimes it's us. So maybe you're the company and your sales guy sells a brand new $400,000 laser die cutting machine to Wild Sam down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And instead of sending your top tech, you send the new guy. You send Jimmy down there. Jimmy's not highly trained. And the install did not go well. You know the install didn't go well because before Jimmy can drive back, Sam's on the phone with you, and he is hot. He just blew through $5,000 worth of material that is now trash because Jimmy didn't set the thing up properly. So he's not only not excited about paying you the rest of your $400,000, he's thinking about suing you. Those are the stories we got to get out. Painful as they are, get both sides out. And as you get both pieces pulled together, what you will find when you have your active listener pulling through and digging deeper for questions and getting all those details put together, you'll start to feel some themes develop. You'll start to see some common threads tie their way through the stories. Grab onto those, group those up. You'll find some things, even if they're small statements, that separate you from the competition. If you're listening, if you're paying attention. Get your list and then group them tightly. Take your 7 best, and no more than 7 because it gets too complicated and we just won't use it. But if you can get to 7, you can group those up and start to be able to format questions that you're going to want to ask your clients about how does that look. And when you're finished, it might look something like this. This is actually my own filter that I use and I've evolved over time when I'm talking with my prospects. I know it's a lot of type. I apologize for that. Happy to share it with anyone who's interested. But this is the conversation I have, and it is only a conversation. I'm not quizzing them. But I want to know, look, if we're spending our own hard-earned money, how quickly would you want to know if it's going to be a Grand Slam client or a strikeout? I mean, for me, kind of hello and a handshake. Absolutely, as soon as I can, I want to know about that. And so, yeah, I'll have my demographics that I start with, because I work with companies that have some critical mass, at least 7 million in sales and at least 50 employees. And then I look for a CEO in their first or last 3 years of leadership. What I work with is executives with CEOs that are either growing or going. What I know is that in the last 3 years, there are things that absolutely can get done to the business that boost the value and protect and preserve the legacy of the business. I also know that when it's the first 3 years, so typically I have a new CEO taking over for a founder or put in place by the board of directors, that while we talk about a 3-year runway, their employees statistically give them 6 months. They give a new CEO 6 months, and that's if everything's in good shape. And during that time, they're watching every move to say, is this a person I want to follow? Is this company going in a direction I want to go? And then they're going to make up their own mind. So that's my groups, that's my demographics. And then I look at some important things that help me understand what's their timing look like. I look to see how their secret sauce operates. What impact does that have on the business? And I also look at what strategic challenge are they facing? Is this an important piece to them, or is it just mildly interesting? We got a great sales trainer here in the Twin Cities by the name of Terry Slattery. And Terry says, great line, nobody hops out of bed in the morning excited for the pain of change. We don't. If you've ever had to go through a new software installation, if you've ever had to do an office relocation, if you've had to do any of those things, you know about the pain of change. We don't love it, so it better be a big deal we can all get behind to keep it going. And then I look for vision. Do they have a vision for a bigger company? They may not know how to get there, and that's okay, but something bigger in mind that we can work towards. Because if it's a lifestyle business and they're happy just gliding along, satisfied with what they've gotten, well, they don't need a coach, and they certainly don't need me. Let's find that out early. And finally, I have 2 very simple psychographic questions of my own, where I'll ask them, tell me about your vacation habits, and tell me about your history with coaches and consultants. From those questions, from that conversation, I can find out very quickly, are we going to be a fit? If they score 25 out of a possible 35, because there's a rubric for each of those, if they score that much or better, we're going to have a great time. They're going to build some wealth in that business. They're going to build the leadership team. We're going to enjoy the time together. They're going to feel challenged, and it's going to be great. But if they score 24 or less, I will work very hard to make sure I get them connected with the right people. So since 2018, I've made 193 connections for people just like you and the skill sets that you maintain. Because I work with a very narrow set of talent. But there is a ton of entrepreneurial talent here in the Twin Cities. And I'm happy to make that introduction. So if they're 24 or less, I'm going to introduce them to someone. But it won't be me. And I'm okay with that because I know where my strike zone is. I know what my Grand Slam client looks like, and I'm very, very good with my limited capacity to be able to let certain ones pass on to other talented hands. So let me just recap the process for a second. Okay? So what you start out with is get a guide. Get that active listener that you trust but can't finish your stories for you. Then gather up your team. Certainly your salespeople, but maybe customer service, maybe finance, maybe your technicians. It really depends on who touches your new clients. And get both sides of the stories out. Get your victory laps, get your great clients out, but make sure you hone in on the ones where we stubbed our toe somewhere. Get our strikeouts on there too. Get a balance. From that, you pull your key IDs together, limit it to 7 so it's manageable, and then you back it up with some questions. What would we ask a prospect that would help us understand better what that spectrum of answers could look like? And then test it. You've already come up with your best and worst clients. Run them through. How would they score? Based on what you know about them, you probably have the most information on this group. And then from there, we iterate, right? We keep evolving. Because you're going to grow as a business, you're going to attract new talent sets, you're going to bring on new capabilities. And you know what? There's going to be more competition. The economy is going to change. There's going to be all kinds of things that evolve with us, and we want to continue to stay sharp with what a Grand Slam client looks like. Because what looked great when you're maybe a $5 million company might look very different when you are a 25 or 35 or $50 million company, and you want to keep up with that. So that's the process. I keep it very simple. It flows well, but it's not easy. Looks good on slides because it's short, but yeah, you got to work at it. Okay? But that's my world. Now, before I wrap up, I just have a couple slides to wrap up with, but what I'd like to do is maybe stop for a couple minutes, and if there's a question I could answer, if there's something I can answer for you that might happen while this is all still up on the screen and fresh, I'm happy to do it. Is there anything? Yes?
How long did it take you to establish where your strike zone was?
How long did it take me to establish my strike zone? So it's been a 10-year evolutionary process, and those questions, those 7 questions you see, have changed over time. So when I started and I was looking at this, one of the first questions I had was, can you tell me about your profit margins? Because I want to know about that and their team and a bunch of other things. What I learned is Minnesota Nights gets in the way of all that. People are reluctant to share a lot of information in the very first conversation, so I had to listen and look for a way that can get me the same results without a harsh questioning. And I've learned with a 2 vacation question, it gets me a lot of answers that I can work with. Yes?
Just to expand on that, when you ask that question of vacations, what are you looking for there? How do you get into that high category?
Yeah. So how do I get to, what does a 2 vacation question mean? The way I looked at it is this. When I sit down with people, what I really wanted to know is, tell me about your profit margins, tell me about your leadership team, tell me about your communication, all these different things. Kind of quiet usually. So when I started paying more attention to what kind of things I was looking for, I looked for a parallel path. And what I learned is that, well, they may not want to talk about those things. Everybody will talk about their last vacation. Everybody. It's just a little chit-chat. But here's what has to be true if you're going to take a vacation, real vacation, not dragging your wife along to a convention. That's ridiculous. If you're going to take a legit vacation with family or friends at least 4 days, okay, then 3 things have to be true. First, you have to have somebody you trust that you're going to leave in charge. So trust is a big deal. You have to have set up enough conversations where they understand what needs to be done so they're not on the phone with you constantly and asking a million questions. They could capture at least 80% of what that world looks like. Trust, communications. Third thing that I found to be true, virtually 100% of the time, they treat their people better. People that are willing to go out and recharge their batteries treat their people better. And that's a character question. So trust, communication, character, bunch of other things that come into that play, I can nail with 1 question. And that keeps us moving, and that tells me. I have had people that say, well, I don't believe in vacation. That's ridiculous. That's not where we're put on here to work. I was like, are you going to tuck all that money in your coffin? What are you going to do? It's like, why are you doing this? What's going on? And how's the family life, by the way? You know, all those things happen. Now, I have had a significant number of entrepreneurs, hardworking entrepreneurs, that used to take vacation. They would love to get back to taking vacations, but today they're stretched too thin. And those are the things that popped up from that. But that's how it all developed. Other question? Yes?
The table thing. So how about the next question of working with coaches and consultants? What are you looking for with that one?
Yeah. I didn't used to have like a go, no-go question. This is that go, no-go question. Here's what I've learned, and it's pretty straightforward, and it is my experience, but it's based on hundreds and hundreds of times at bat. There are 2 groups that are out there. There is the DIY group. There is that rugged individualist, the kind that will go out and read books, and then they'll take their advice from the same place that they watch cat videos. And then there is the GoPro group. There is the group that knows what they know. They're comfortable with themselves. They're relatively humble. They're the Ted Williams group that's willing to reach out to a coach and get further faster than they could on their own. Those are the people I want to be with. Those are the ones I want to spend my time with, and those are the people that appreciate it and move the fastest. So. Anything else? Okay. Thank you for those questions. I appreciate it. I'll wrap up here. This is my world. It's very simple. I do two things. I coach CEOs in their first or last 3 years of leadership, getting ready for a transition or taking off as a new leader. And I have a number of unique processes that I share with my clients that we use to help build their businesses out. I'm looking for companies that are innovative, that are looking to grow. And that's a special category. That's why I use what I use to get down, and so I can spend that deep time with those best companies that are out there. And I have a few wonderful clients here today. I appreciate you guys showing up. But like I said, and thank you for that question, is there's two groups. In my experience, there's two groups. There's that DIY cat video group, and then there's the GoPro group that's out there. And I love the GoPro group because I have limited capacity myself. And that's where I want to spend my time. So if you know somebody like that, then have them text me, have them call me, have them email me. I'm easy to find. My name's Todd Eberhardt with Dynasty Leadership. Thank you for your time.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah,
I just forgot to mention that our sponsor, the Irish Titan, is having an event. There's cards on your table October 3rd. See you next month. Thank you for coming.